She assumed you'd always be there, waiting, reaching out, proving your worth. But the moment you chose silence over pursuit, everything changed. At first she barely noticed, convinced you'd circle back like always. But as the days turned into weeks and your presence faded, something inside her shifted. The certainty she once had started to crack. Why haven't you called? Why aren't you reacting? Why does she suddenly find herself thinking about you more than ever? That's when it finally hits her. You weren't just an option. You were the real deal. And now she's the one feeling the loss, questioning everything, and realizing she may have let go of something she should have held on to. In this video, we're diving deep into the psychology of why women often don't feel the impact of your absence until you're truly gone, and why your silence can be the most powerful statement you ever make. Stay tuned, because this one will change the way you see everything. 1. The illusion of permanence. People often take for granted what they believe will always be there. She didn't mean to overlook your worth, but your presence became something she simply expected. Constant, reliable, always within reach. You offered her attention, care, and emotional support, and without realizing it, she grew comfortable. Not because she didn't appreciate you, but because she assumed you'd never leave. And when a woman believes a man will always be there, the urgency to cherish him fades. She may start pulling back, not out of disinterest, but to see if you'll chase. The moment you do, the dynamic shifts. She holds the power, and your value in her eyes begins to diminish. But when you step away, the game changes. Your silence disrupts her sense of security, forcing her to face a reality she never considered. That you were never an obligation, but a choice. And now, that choice is no longer in her hands. For the first time, she has to grapple with the fact that you may be gone for good. 2. The emotional void. Hits harder than expected. At first, when you walk away, she may seem unfazed. She might even act as though she doesn't care, especially in public or on social media. She could appear perfectly fine, posting pictures, hanging out with friends, and staying busy with work or hobbies. But beneath the surface, something shifts. The truth is, no amount of distractions can fill the space that your absence leaves behind. For women, the emotional void created by someone they once depended on is far more profound than they might show on the outside. While men tend to approach loss with logic and rational thinking, analyzing the situation, asking themselves what went wrong, women process it with emotion first. She may not even notice it immediately, but over time, the reality of your absence sinks in. Slowly, things begin to remind her of you. Certain songs, places you once visited together, or even old text messages that pop up on her phone. These little moments bring something unexpected into her mind. Did I make a mistake? She starts to feel the absence of the security you once gave her. The foundation she thought was solid is now replaced with doubt, confusion, and regret. The more she reflects, the more she starts questioning her decisions. The feelings of certainty she once had about her life and her choices begin to unravel. And in this moment, a powerful realization hits her. She had something special with you, and she let it slip away. This emotional void hits harder than she anticipated. It makes her reconsider everything. And it's this moment of realization that opens her eyes to the fact that losing you isn't something she can easily move past. She starts to see that you were more than just another person in her life. You were someone irreplaceable. 3. When she realizes you've moved on. This is the turning point, the moment that completely shifts her perspective. When she realizes you've moved on and you're not waiting for her. For a long time, she believed you would chase, that you would reach out and try to rekindle what was lost. She thought you would come back, offering explanations, seeking closure. But instead, you did the unthinkable. You stayed silent, You didn't chase her. You didn't look back. You didn't even bother trying to reconnect. You simply kept moving forward with your life. At first, she tries to convince herself that this is just a game, that you're testing her, playing hard to get, and that sooner or later you'll return. But as time passes, she notices something unsettling. You're not checking in on her, not liking her posts, not engaging with her stories. There's no trace of you left, no hint of you lingering in her world. You're truly gone. That's when the shift happens. She begins to wonder, did I misjudge him? Was he actually a better man than I realized? Is he moving on with someone else? These thoughts begin to stir in her mind, creating an emotional storm that forces her to confront your value. Only now, after she's lost you. It's in this moment that regret transforms into obsession. She becomes consumed by the thought of you moving on, and the more she thinks about it, the more she begins to question everything she once took for granted. The silence you've left behind makes her realize the depth of her mistake, and that's when things become irreversible. 4. The fear of being replaced. Few things shake a woman to her core more than the thought that you've moved on and found someone better. This fear goes deeper than just losing you. It's about losing her sense of significance, her place in your life. At first, she might have been fine with the distance. She could have even convinced herself that you were still thinking about her, that you were just busy or taking your time. But then something shifts. She hears from mutual friends that you're doing just fine without her, or maybe she sees a picture of you smiling, laughing and sharing moments with someone else. Or it could simply be that she realizes, maybe through the absence of your messages or presence, that you've truly stopped caring. That's when everything changes. The tables turn, and she begins to obsess over your life. She checks your social media constantly, replays old conversations in her mind, and starts reflecting on all the times you were there for her, when you were the one who made her feel special. Now that you're gone, that feeling is replaced with fear. The fear of being replaced. But it's not just about jealousy, it's about her ego. She wants to know that she still matters to you, that she still holds some kind of power over your emotions. So what does she do? She tries to get your attention in subtle ways, liking your posts randomly, sending you an occasional message, or maybe even trying to initiate a casual conversation as if nothing has changed. This is where you face the ultimate choice. Will you re-engage with her and give her the validation she's seeking, or will you continue moving forward, further proving to her that she no longer has the power to pull you back into her orbit? The power of indifference. Reaching this point is a game changer. This is where your true power lies. By the time she realizes your worth, you've already achieved something far greater. You no longer need her to validate your value. You don't need her attention to feel complete, and you definitely don't need to return to a place that's already behind you. When you reach the stage of indifference, your mindset transforms. You stop obsessing over whether she's thinking about you. You stop wondering if she misses you or if she's regretting her actions. Why? Because your life is no longer on hold for her. You're too busy building, growing, and living your own life to concern yourself with her emotional turmoil. Ironically, this shift in your energy is exactly what she finds most compelling. Deep down, she knows that she had something good with you, something real, and she let it slip away. And now she's forced to confront the painful truth that the one person she could rely on to make her feel valued is no longer waiting around for her approval. The power of indifference is that it leaves her with no choice but to reflect on her own decisions. And when you stop seeking her validation, you put yourself in the ultimate position of control. 6. The silent shock. At first, when you go silent, she convinces herself that it's only temporary. She tells herself, he's probably just caught up with something. He'll be back soon enough. But as the days drag on and turn into weeks, the undeniable truth starts to sink in. This isn't just a brief pause. You've truly vanished. This moment, the silent shock, marks the point where she's forced to face the reality of your absence. She starts to replay the last conversations you had. The questions flood her mind. Did I make the wrong choice? Did I push him away without even realizing it? Did I take him for granted? At first, she tries to avoid confronting her feelings. She distracts herself with friends, shallow conversations, and maybe even tries to start something new with someone else. But no matter what she does, something feels missing. A void is there that wasn't there before, a space that no one else seems able to fill. That's when it clicks. It wasn't just you that left. It's the version of herself that she was when she was with you. She's no longer the same person without you by her side, and that realization hits her harder than she expected. She's left with a sinking feeling of regret. The usual coping mechanisms she relies on don't seem to work anymore. Other men don't make her feel the same sense of security, comfort, or connection that you did. Conversations feel forced, shallow, and none of them truly understand her the way you did. She tries to convince herself she made the right decision, but deep down, there's a small voice that won't go away. What if I was wrong? That doubt starts to grow, becoming stronger with each passing day. She checks her phone, expecting a message from you, but it never comes. Each moment she waits only deepens the weight of the realization, and that's when the sting really hits. You were once a steady presence in her life, and now there's nothing but emptiness where you once stood. 8. The fear of losing control. As time passes, a deeper fear sets in for her. The fear of losing control. When you first pulled away, she may have thought it was just a phase, that you'd come back around. But as the silence stretches, and she sees that you aren't chasing her or trying to re-enter her life, she begins to realize that she might actually be losing her grip. The fact that you're not showing any signs of desperation or any signs of needing her forces her to face something she didn't expect. She's no longer in control. This realization shakes her to the core. She starts asking herself, did I miscalculate everything? Was I too confident that I could pull away and you'd always be there? The loss of control is an uncomfortable feeling for her, one that she hasn't experienced before. She never expected that she could lose her hold on you, but now, with every passing day, it becomes clearer that you're slipping away, and she's unable to get you back on her terms. 9. The desperation for validation. At this point, something begins to shift. Her ego is bruised, and it triggers an overwhelming need for validation. She needs to know that you still care, even if it's just a little. She doesn't want to appear weak, but the urge to see something from you, anything, becomes almost too much to bear. This is when she starts dropping subtle hints, hoping to get your attention without seeming desperate. She might post something on social media, hoping you'll notice, or she may send a message with no clear intention, just hoping for a response. The act of reaching out feels like regaining control over a situation that's slipping away. But when she doesn't hear from you, it intensifies her anxiety, leading her to question whether you've truly moved on or if you just don't care anymore. The silence amplifies her desperation, and she finds herself caught in a loop of uncertainty and longing. 10. The realization of what she lost. It's in the quiet moments, when there's nothing left to distract her, that the true weight of her loss hits. As much as she tries to ignore it, the void you left behind is undeniable. She begins to realize that it wasn't just your presence that she missed. It was the connection, the comfort, and the security that came with it. No matter how many distractions she surrounds herself with, none of them seem to offer what you did. At first, she tried to convince herself she made the right decision, that she was fine without you. But as time drags on, she starts to see the truth. The life she thought she could easily replace with someone else isn't quite as fulfilling as she imagined. And that's when regret begins to sink in. She starts replaying old memories and questioning whether she made a mistake. What was once so easy to take for granted is now something she would do anything to have back. 11. The struggle with pride and ego. The hardest part of this realization is dealing with her pride. She's a woman who's used to being in control of her relationships, and the idea that she let something good slip through her fingers feels like a blow to her ego. She doesn't want to admit that she made a mistake. Admitting that would mean acknowledging that she was wrong. So she plays a dangerous game. She keeps her distance, pretending she's fine, pretending she doesn't care, when deep down it's all she can think about. Her pride keeps her from reaching out. She tells herself that she can't show weakness, but every time she thinks about you, that voice in her head reminds her that if she were to contact you, she might risk rejection. So instead, she keeps her emotions bottled up, locked away behind her pride, but it's starting to eat her up inside. 12. The test of her power. As her emotions churn, she comes up with a plan to regain control. She'll test you. She starts making subtle moves like liking old photos or posting something with the intent to provoke a reaction. She might even send a message, hoping to see if you'll engage. These small actions are her way of fishing for a response. She wants to know if you still care. She wants to know if you're still interested, still thinking about her, still vulnerable to her influence. But there's one crucial piece to the puzzle. If you don't bite, if you don't react as she expects, it hits her hard. The power dynamic shifts. She begins to see that she's no longer the one pulling the strings. That's when the anxiety starts to spiral, and she wonders if you've truly moved on, or worse, if you've already found someone else who has replaced her in your life. 13. The moment she sees. You've moved on. The hardest moment comes when she realizes the truth. You've moved on. Whether it's through a glimpse of you with someone else, or just noticing that you no longer engage with her in the same way, it stings. The realization is sharp. She's no longer part of your world. And this truth cuts through her defenses, deeper than anything she ever expected. She might try reaching out one last time, sending a message, testing the waters to see if she can still spark something. But when she doesn't get the response she hoped for, it hits her like a ton of bricks. She's no longer the priority. She's no longer the one you're waiting for. She's lost her place in your life. And in that moment, the regret and frustration that have been simmering inside her finally boil over. She may never admit it to anyone, but deep down, she knows she's made a terrible mistake. And by the time she truly grasps your worth, you've already moved forward, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. 14. The emotional breakdown. When the full weight of the situation finally sinks in, she hits an emotional wall. For weeks, or even months, she has convinced herself she's fine, telling herself that she's moved on and that you'll eventually come back. But then, the truth becomes undeniable. You are no longer part of her life. You're not reaching out, not waiting, not trying to make things work. And in that moment, the emotional breakdown begins. This is the moment where her defenses crumble. She might find herself crying uncontrollably, feeling a sadness that she can't even put into words. All the emotions she buried deep inside come rushing to the surface. She thought she could handle it, that she could control the narrative, but now she feels lost. It's not just about losing you as a person. It's about losing the connection, the emotional safety she once had. The realization that she can't just pick up where she left off hits hard, and that's when the heartbreak becomes real. She may even wonder if she will ever feel that same sense of peace and connection again. This moment of clarity forces her to confront the fact that she's lost something irreplaceable, and it's all on her terms now. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And if you're curious about what happens when you've truly moved on and created a new chapter, check out the next video on your screen right now.